Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to Full Course Yellow. It's that time of the week again. If you're joining us straight from Channel 31's In Pit Lane program, glad you could join us. We're missing a couple of people tonight, but we've got some on board. We've got Dave Stillwell is on his way to Morgan Park, I think, for the IPRA Nationals. We'll find out more about that when Dave catches up with us. Chris is alongside us as well, and also we've got Craig Doc Latigo as well. So, g'day everyone. How are we?
Pretty good, thanks, Brett.
This is good, and so let's get underway and see what we've got to talk about tonight. We'll just see. We've got a couple of comments already, so let's open up there. We got Tony. We got Tony there. Thank you, Mark. Mark is pointing out that the show apparently is still on. It did go a little bit long. It did go a little bit long tonight, and we don't have Pete. Pete is usually our monitor of the television program because he's the one who's got a television in the room with him, and he can put it on in the background. And you're still muted, Doc.
Cool. Yeah. No. It's the crocodile running around the shore, so it's definitely not on still.
We're on. Okay, that's it. Unless they've morphed us into a crocodile. But anyways, thanks for joining us. If you're joining us once again, good day to Jeff as well, and also to Box. Good day to all of you. So let's find out what's happening. First of all, Dave's popped up. Dave, where are you at the moment? Are you still in Melbourne or are you up in Queensland?
I'm still in Melbourne, but I won't be 24 hours from now.
Well, this is good. So it's Morgan Park, isn't it, that is running it?
Yes, so this is the third year in a row they've attempted to get the Improved Production Nationals off the ground. COVID nixed the 2020 and 2021 varietals, but the 2022 Nationals are go. 50-odd cars from around Australia, all heading to Morgan Park, a track that doesn't favour any one particular type of car. So a really good opportunity to have great racing in both unders and over 2 litres, with V8s, Rotaries, Turbo 4s, a smattering of cars from all different drivetrain configurations, all competing to find out who will get to wear the number 1 for the next 12 months.
I noticed that Jordan Cox has entered again this year as well. So now we're very well known in TCR, of course, but made his name in improved production racing. So he's entered. What about some of the locals who raced last week down at Phillip Island? Any of the top guys there going up?
Well, the number 1 competitor, I'd have to say, would have to be Paul Cruz with their the Cruz brothers with their S13 Sylvia. That's an incredibly well-developed car and particularly suited to the variety that is Morgan Park. It's not a track that favours the big V8s like a Sandown or the Bend. A lot of constant radius corners, turbocharged car, good at getting off the slower corners with the boost down low. Definitely a car to watch from Victoria. But, the RX-7 of Zach Hudson, of course, who we've seen running in TCR. And I believe you referred to Jordan incorrectly. I believe we're mandated by the rules of the internet. We need to refer to him as YouTube sensation.
YouTube sensation, yes, trademark. Yes, his legendary feats behind the wheel of that Honda Civic were just incredible. So it's good to see him still in the world of improved production racing and the racing. So Adam Poole, who won the championship down here, he's not a part of that.
No, unfortunately, the tightness of the time frame between the last round of the Vic State Circuit Racing Championships and the Nationals is just a little bit too tight for a number of Victorian competitors to enter. So a number of the Nationals representatives from Victoria didn't actually run at the last state round of the Vic State Series, which is disappointing, but it's just a function of the way the calendars work out. If you try to run the Nationals much later in the year at Queensland, it just becomes unbearably hot, and you wouldn't get too many attracted from the southern states.
Yeah, well, that seems to be a problem at the moment. I mean, as we say, welcome to Paul Van der Hacker. Good day, Paul. How are you? We've seen the Formula One calendar released. Now we've also got tonight, just as we go to air, we've got the World Endurance Championship calendar released, and I think it was Graham Goodwin from Daily Sports Car put in an interesting article in Daily Sports Car where he was pointing out that all of these extra dates that we've got for Formula One now basically means the days of trying to have, free weekends, for other things to happen, is basically gone now. And that's pretty much the same here, in Australia. Over the next few weeks, if you have a look at the calendar here, on the weeks we've got the MotoGP, there's something up at Winton that weekend. I think this week, the day of historic Sandown. There's also another thing at Winton. There's a sprint meeting down at Phillip Isle. There's stuff happening everywhere, and you just can't sort of space out the calendar. And of course, the big problem there, it's not so much for the competitors. The competitors will go where the competitors want to go, but it's having all the officials there to sort of, to wave the flags and do all the important stuff that allows them to actually, run these meetings.
You won't find a disagreement from me on that one, Brett. Certainly one of the best ways to all of our fans that are listening locally and around the world, one of the best ways to enjoy your motorsport is right up and in your face. So find out where your local racetrack is, be it a circle track or a racetrack or a rally circuit or an off-road, and find out different ways you can get involved as a volunteer official. There's always something that you can do to help make the sport a little bit safer, a little bit nicer, and a little bit more accessible.
Yeah, I know they had a call out today for a couple of things coming up. The Bend have got their big meeting. That's an interesting meeting coming up. They've sort of got, the classic and some of their historics, and also the TCR and all the ARG categories. A whole bunch of things happening on a weekend coming up towards the end of October. And they were sort of desperate today, saying, "Hey, please, we are desperately looking for people to come down." I know, like, when we went down to Baskerville, that was one of the things that they were struggling with as well because of the weather and a whole bunch of other things. And obviously they've got a much tighter, a much smaller group of people to sort of pool to pick from down in Tasmania, because at least at places like Winton and perhaps even Wakefield when it's open and all the rest of it, you sometimes will get people going interstate and making the trip and making a weekend of it, but not so much for Tasmania, because as we found out, it can be pretty bloody expensive to get down there. But there we've got 12-hour relay is on at Winton this weekend. Oh, okay, that's the Alfa Romeo Club. That's been going for a long time now, so that's happening this weekend. Also, I tell you something, I only found out this was happening this weekend as well. You might be interested with the MotoGP coming up. This weekend at the Oakley Go-Kart Club, there's the mini FIM sort of Junior Cup for the mini bikes, which is happening on the go-kart track there, and they're running on over 3 days. They've got the whole weekend booked out, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm thinking of trying to get along perhaps on the Sunday and wave a camera around in their general direction, because that should be fun. That in the lead up to the Grand Prix. So so that's happening as well. Andrew's saying too many races at irrelevant tracks, in his opinion. The problem is, it's easy for us to say it's irrelevant, but for the people who are racing, they don't see it as irrelevant at all. They see it as like really important and an opportunity to get out on the track. I'm sure the people up at Winton racing in the 12-hour, they're not household names, but I'm sure they're going to have a fabulous weekend of motorsport, and for them it's going to be very important. So.
Well, it's still the end of school holidays for a lot of people in this part of the world, so they'll be out there trying to make the most of it and have some family.
Yeah, don't I know it? I was out at Fountain Gate today, and you can tell it's school holidays, that's for sure.
But at least the roads are a little bit quieter, because getting around's been easier. I'll give it that. So.
Yes, that's it. Mark Goldsmith saying hello. G'day, Mark. Mark, I don't know if you're still up in Queensland. Mark sort of went from one extreme to another. He went down to Baskerville and raced the Elfin down at Baskerville, and then headed straight up for a holiday in Queensland. So from one extreme to the other weather-wise. I finally picked up, you'll be pleased to know, Mark, I picked up the tripod today. I went round finally found time to get round to the Elfin Heritage Centre and pick up the tripod. So thanks for delivering it back safe and sound to us. So we appreciate that. And to Bill Hemming. Bill probably making his way back from Europe now, unless I think Spa was last weekend. Not sure, but yeah, but it might be this weekend. But anyway, there's Bill Hemming from the Elfin Revival Centre. So Mark's in Palm Valley, which sounds very, very, very nice. Thank you very much. And probably, I was going to say much warmer than here, but it's actually been not a bad day today. So, yeah. Okay, let's have a look at some of the news that's coming around. It was announced officially today, something we've known for a long, long time now, and that is the Matt Payne has signed for Grove Racing in the supercars full time for next year. As I said, we've known for that. We've known about that. He was replacing Lee Holdsworth, of course. Dave Reynolds has also re-signed with the team, so Dave Reynolds and Matt Payne will be the drivers for Grove Racing for next year. Knew about that much. I didn't sort of run with it because I sort of found out about it under false pretenses, although not deliberately. I was at a non-motorsport related event and met somebody who had no idea about the show and no idea what I did, and he sort of just pointed out that his company were very heavily involved in the world of supercar racing, and and a team called Grove Racing, which had David Reynolds in and Lee Holdsworth, but he wouldn't be around next year because they're getting in this young kid from New Zealand, and so this was way back in about late April, so. I thought I'm not going to run with it, but yes, it's obviously been on the cards forever. So Matt Payne is going to take over. So he'll want to be good. He's been racing overseas and in the World Endurance Championship and the European Le Mans Series and a few things like that. So he's coming back and coming back to race full time in supercars. So another Kiwi driver, and he'll probably be bloody quick as well. So that's coming up. Speaking of quick Kiwis, Shane Van Gisbergen, second in class, behind his compatriot Hayden Paddon in the rally, first day of Rally New Zealand. That kicked off today, and in the WRC2 class, Hayden Paddon in the Hyundai was the fastest, but Shane Van Gisbergen second fastest, just ahead of Harry Bates, the Australian there. So that's happening over the weekend. So yeah, that'll be good if you happen to have an opportunity to watch that. I think that's exclusive on Stan Sport now, which is a bit of a shame. But you can't. So if you want to see that, that's happening in decent hours there. What else have we got to talk about? Yes, French star Terry Claret racing at Bathurst. So Bathurst International, there'll be no S5000s, but there will be a French TCR driver, and he's a former French champion, very experienced, so he'll add a little bit of colour and movement to that.
Touted as the first international signing too, so it might be more than just him.
Yeah, I know that was always the idea, wasn't it? And to get people in. Speaking of ARG as well, Matt Braid, who was in charge, the CEO. He's sort of moved aside now. He's going to stay on in an advisory capacity, but they're dropping the CEO thing completely. And Liam Kirkpatrick, who's been involved in, and his father also involved for many years at that level of racing, and back in the days of the Nations Cup and all sorts of things. He's been around a long time, so he's taking basically over that role under the Chief Operating Officer title. So it's just it's a new title for probably a lot of the same sorts of things. But yeah, he's got some things to worry about, including the S5000, which will not, as we said I think last week, will not race at Bathurst because of safety reasons. And this week, I don't know, what does everybody think of this? As S5000 this week have announced that they're going to run a Pro-Am class. Now, what does everybody think of that? Dave, you got any? What do you think of that?
I think it's certainly Chris Lambden and the team at ARG need to find different ways of attracting participation on track. And one of the ways that they can do that is offer this as an alternative, to the GT3 Cup Challenge and the Australian GT, sort of that level of gentleman racer. If we hark back to the 1950s and the 60s and the 70s, the heyday of the Australian Gold Star, quite a large amount of the participation in that level of open wheeler racing. And it was indeed at that point that open wheeler racing became a thing, because, the Australian Grand Prix often was for both what we would now see as sports cars and open wheelers. So I think
the problem with that though still is they're not going to be eligible for the Gold Star. They're separating the categories.
Well, as I was saying, Doc, if your category harkens back to that heyday period of open wheel racing, and shall we say a more gentlemanly approach to the sport, and if you're pulling on the heartstrings with a Tasman series or a Tasman Cup, something Tasman-esque, one of the things that you can do to attract different interest in the category or in that level of racing is to offer opportunities to people that like, big, fast, scary open wheel cars. We've
I
seen
agree
there's
with it. I agree
a
with
huge,
the
a huge
concept.
swell of
I'm just saying you're not going
there's
to
a
be
huge swell of participation in the historic version of S5000, the Formula 5000s. Even someone like Kenny Smith from New Zealand. I mean, I'd love to see how he goes in an S5000. He's well into his 80s and he's still competitive in open wheeler racing. So age is no barrier.
The thing about it is though, I think the problem with S5000 now is I think they're confused. I think they've always been a little confused as to what the hell this is supposed to be. I mean, is it a nostalgia push for people of my generation who grew up with Formula 5000s and obviously loved them? Is it becoming a glorified track car day where track day car sort of where you get sort of you dumb it down to the point where it's got to be kept drivable and safe for the pro-ams and for the amateurs. I mean, it's running for the CAMS Gold Star, and I know they're running in separate categories and all the rest of it, but it doesn't inspire me sort of, like if I was looking at it as the top level of open wheel racing in Australia, if half the field is made up of 50-year-old businessmen who longing for the romance of Formula 5000 days, rather than really what it should be, which is the best young talent in Australia fighting tooth and nail for the most prestigious prize in Australian motorsport, which is should be the Australian Drivers' Championship.
Well, that's why they've done what they've done is they've created the two categories now within the category to create interest elsewhere, because it's just been open slather up until now. So anyone's been able to do it. They're eligible to drive the machine. Now they're saying, right, there's the Pro-Am category. Now there's the Gold Star category. So therefore, we'd love anyone still to enter it, but you've got this to aim for it if you're going out for a gentlemanly driver, still he said, or you're a young rookie that has got his points under his belt and able to flick it around. So, or if you're like as we know, a John Martin or a Timmy who owns his own car, you're going to be going for the peak of it. You're going to be going for the Gold Star that has been resurrected since they brought the category back in it. So that's what they're trying to picture that now, I think, is trying to attract everyone. But now, yes, you're still going to get a trophy. You're in this particular thing, and there's going to be prize money separately for both years now.
I think what Paul's saying there, I'm of the same opinion as Paul. Everybody, like, I was amazed when they, when they said they were going to. I think we interviewed, during the pandemic. I got during one of the breaks in the lockdown. I went out and I spoke to Chris Lambden out at Borland Engineering at the time. We spoke about the future of the category, and one of the things he said was we're going to race at Bathurst. We want to race at Bathurst, and I thought, yeah, that's never going to happen. Then I spoke to Eugene Arocca out at Sandown, and Eugene said, yes, we really want it to happen. We think this is really exciting. And I thought, they can't be serious. Well, they were serious, and yeah, I think they dodged a bullet there. There were a couple of really, really potentially big accidents there that those cars are not suitable to Bathurst. They are just, I don't think any open wheel. I get worried when I saw the Formula V's running at Mount Panorama, let alone S5000s. So so what do we do with them now? I mean, the other confusing thing is we've got a CAMS Gold Star, which is sort of done and dusted now, and they cancelled at least one round, if not a couple of rounds there. Then they've got this so-called Tasman Series, which is now at this stage down to 2 races. Because they lost the Bathurst race. Now, what I'm hearing, sort of nothing official, but what I'm hearing is that round might be replaced with a possible race at Island Magic. That's what's happened with the Porsches, the GT3 Cup. They're going to run it to Island Magic as part of that meeting, and I believe that one of the solutions to getting a third round of the S5000s in is to race them down at Island Magic as well. So that would make Island Magic even a bigger thing. I mean, if you've got
Even more magical?
even more magical, yes, it would be absolutely. It would be otherworldly in terms of its magic, because you'd have all of the locals, turning up who are going to make it, sort of their big end of year celebration, and then you've got the Porsches as well, and you may have S5000 on the card as well. So that'd be fantastic if that happens.
Just to, I don't want to put a line in the sand with it, but I was recently lucky enough to be over at GRM in Dandenong a few weeks ago and got an extensive exclusive, and at Hollinger a few weeks before that, in fact. So Hollinger do a lot of the mechanicals, a lot of the base work on the gearboxes and the some of the castings there on them. And I was there with GRM with some notable people that actually race at the moment in TCR and engineers there on the particular evening. So, look, the feeling I've got, and we all know that, Brett, myself, and Silly, and a few people that are in the know in the sport as well. So you're looking at approximately about $15,000 a weekend, between $15,000 to $20,000 a weekend to put these cars on the track and put some rubber around them and pay your fees and cover all your costs for it, etc., like that, your garage, blah blah blah. So you've got that particular base fee, $15,000 to $20,000. So that's what people have been coming. Sometimes have been struggling to find numbers as well, though, too, in the past 2 or 3 years, despite the problems we have with some track time because we're in lockdown or whatever like that. What they have to do is probably the management has to say, right, next year, 2023, we are going to have 4 to 5 races. Decide on 4 to 5 venues and lock them in and say, we are definitely racing at these. This is where they are. This is what the dates are. This is what the tracks are. This is how, and whether it be, I'm sure Gary's open this, Gary and Barry and the guys, or whoever it is, you will be able to lease a car for this amount of particular amount for whole 4 races, and you will get our unworldly support from us. That way it locks in a driver for the whole year and to race it, and it gives them certainty to themselves, the team that are behind them, and also the track and the numbers they're going to have. Because otherwise they're just going to be dancing around again next year between, are we racing here or are we racing there? Who's driving here? We haven't found, we've only got 7 cars running at this venue. This one we've got 12 at. If they don't give some certainty and some planning, you're just going to have people that are just going to be jumping in the seat at the last minute, because most of the cars are leased. I think, as we know, Tim Macro owns one, and I think there's one more owned, and the rest of them are all leased out for each particular event.
Well, half the field is made up of cars that Gary and Barry run themselves. I mean, and have drivers in them. So they've obviously got to find ways of getting people in. But I think that's one of the things. I think they've got to decide what they want to call this thing. I think the whole thing about having a Tasman series, once again, it's very romantic to bring back the name of the Tasman series, but until we can actually have races in New Zealand, then they should be dropping the Tasman name, because 3 races in Australia, 2 races in Australia, whatever, is not the Tasman series. The Tasman series is 2 or 3 races in New Zealand, 2 or 3 races in Australia. They should just concentrate on the Cams Gold Star. They've obviously lost the Grand Prix. They're not going to get back to Albert Park, unfortunately. So they've got to find a few big races. I mean, they're going to race at they're going to race at the Gold Coast. They're going to race at Adelaide at the end of the year. I think they need to sort of try and concentrate on that. Try and do some sort of deal with supercars so they can get on those blue ribboned events next year, all the street events, basically things like start off at Newcastle, perhaps have their weekend down at Symmons Plains. That seemed to go quite well. Just pick out, as you say, 5 or 6 maximum races spread over the year, so there's plenty of time between races, so they've got time to repair any damage and to save a bit of money and prepare for the next one. And make each race really standalone mean something. I mean, when they started out, they had they were calling it. We had the John McCormick Cup and the Alfredo Costanzo Cup. Let's really push that sort of thing up. Let's make them really big standalone races, and they only happen, say, 5 or 6 times a year. at this stage, that's more than enough because they can't sustain them for any more races than that.
And as you said, Brett, high public participation. In other words, pick the ones out that are going to have huge attendance, and we'll rave about it.
Yeah, I also think they need to. I think this obsession about making them sort of slide around and having low aero and really hard tyres that last for a whole, that's all well and good, but I don't think that does anybody any favours in the long run. I think they should. Concentrate on saying, hey, these things are the fastest race cars in Australia. Let's celebrate that. Let's. Even if they've got to drop the power a little bit, let's have some decent aero, because that's one of the things Rubens Barrichello said to us, not during the interview, but after the interview, when we asked him about sort of his son, whether he'd like to see his son get behind the wheel of one of them. He went, no. It was like, I had a great time. I think they're great fun, marvellous things, but my son, no, I don't think this is a good place for young drivers to be in, because they're just so totally foreign to everything. He said they were not analogous in any way to something like Indy Lights or even an Indy car, because they were just sliding, because they slide all over the place, and it's fun to watch. But
Brett just briefly touched on what Box has brought up down there. Brett has brought up on the lower third. Yes, they did turn them down. I think it was 80%. So don't quote me on that. But they're going to let them. It's an update for a furthermore. They're going to, and it's well renowned now. Box. They're going to let them run for parade laps or some qualifying laps. Let them have a run around at 100%. So hopefully they'll give themselves some qualifying room and just have a bit of a spin and a bit of fun there at Bathurst, but it depends on.
Well, they'll obviously send them out with the best drivers, with people like Timmy Macro and or James Golding or John Martin or somebody like that. Somebody who's they can say, okay, we can trust you to get out. They'll be out there. They won't be racing. They'll be out there doing exhibition laps. So everyone will keep their distance, but away from each other, and they'll just say, okay, let's go out and see what they actually can do. I think they want to find out, what is the potential of these things around Bathurst. I mean, how fast can they go? But once again, I just like to see them just take some of the restrictions off the aero, and because everybody we've spoken to have said how really hard these things are to drive fast. Tom Randall has said it. Lewis Leeds. Joey Mawson, they've all said, oh yeah, they're a real handful because the tyres are really hard and there's not a lot of aero.
Nathan told us in the studio on one of our shows as well too, was yep.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it would be much better if they were a bit more like a modern race car, and they stuck well in the corners, and and they had a bit of better. Okay, it's going to cost them more in rubber if they've got to change tyres every race. It's going to cost them a lot more. But those things they're running on now, I mean, are like concrete. They only come on song about sort of in the last 3 or 4 laps of a 15-lap race.
And yeah, there you go. For example, Timmy Macro said that when he was doing the initial testing down at Phillip Island, when he was the only one racing around in one, that it took, he had to put a lot of effort into getting those tyres on song. And so that's always been prevalent.
Anyway, that's good. I'm just really passionate. I would love to see, I'm a big open wheel fan, of course, and I would really like to see open wheelers, come back to some sort of level of support in Australia. But perhaps we might be faced with the situation that, open wheelers are just not for this country for whatever. The supercar obsession is just so great that there's really no point. If you want to race open wheelers, you can jump out of karts and you get into Formula Ford, and then if you want to race open wheelers, you get the hell out of Australia as quickly as possible, as we've seen with people like Christian Mansell and Oscar Piastri and Alex Peroni and all of those people who have just and Hugh Barter. I mean, Hugh has never done any sort of real racing at a top level in Australian circuit racing. He basically went from karts and went straight overseas, and is now doing really well, of course, in Formula 4, and hopefully next year will make a step up from there as well.
Well, I guess the unfortunate news that came out this week was that there might be a whole series worth of Formula 3 regional specification cars coming up at a bargain price on a motorsport liquidator near you, if the reports are to be believed about the W Series?
Yes, it's got its A1 Grand Prix revisited. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. I mean, the stories coming out of the United Kingdom and getting mainstream media over there is that the W Series probably won't fill all of their rounds this year, and that they've got major financial problems, and probably won't be back next year, which would be a shame. I mean, it started for all the right reasons, but I think the realistic I think realism has struck because you had Stefano Domenicali sort of coming out and saying that even if somebody wins somebody like Jamie Chadwick, the chances of them getting into Formula One were still very, very slim, and at best he couldn't see any young women coming through that series getting into Formula One for another 5 to 6 years if everything went absolutely perfectly and they got all the super license points. And they were really dominant and won championships in Formula 2 and Formula. I think they sort of realised that this idea that they were going to jump out or they'd be discovered and jump into Formula 1 is just clearly not going to happen. So it's a shame. The racing was pretty good.
Yeah, probably echoes some of the comments from some of the other high-profile female racers who said, anything that brings attention to women in the sport is a good thing, but they queried whether the cash injection that was necessary to start up a whole new series, with the logistical efforts and the PR and the marketing and everything, could that injection of funds have been better used to, put together a program that put 3, 4 or 5, female drivers into high-profile, well-funded, well-resourced programs in your, Formula Regional, in your Formula 3, in your Indy Lights, in your Indy Pro 2000, all of those stepping stone series, even an event in, say, a Super Formula in Japan, finding different ways to promote women at the same level in the same series as all the other drivers compete in.
Well, not only that, you might be onto something there. Is if they were to be, the money was redirected and in a greater and more chiseled way, you also might find that everyone might be able to learn a little bit on it doesn't matter whether they're man, woman, or child, or any sort of mammal. Which way is a good learning tool to get a stepping stone? The best way to get to Formula One, whereas like you put this particular girl in that category. Okay, that went well, but she did really, it didn't really strengthen this particular part of their aspect of their driving or the teams or something like that, or on the avenues, which the doors were shut quickly. Whereas something else in another country driving that, yes, opened up a lot of doors. So it could be a learning experience for everybody, not just the drivers.
They've also,
I think regardless of what direction that energy for diversity in sport goes, it's got to make sense on 3 levels. It has to make sense financially. There's got to be good, strong, and long-term backing of a program so that it can meet its aims. It has to make sense from a sporting perspective, as in this has to be legitimate. It has to be, as part of a pathway to a chosen career in the sport. It has to be amongst, with good teams, well-resourced teams. And it also has to make sense from a media and a publicity and a political sense. So it has to engage with, we've seen the FIA Girls on Track program, and the Women of Australian Motorsport programs, where it's not just about driving the car, it's about, promoting activation of female talent in STEM, in science, technology, engineering and mathematics. It's about, fostering all types of female participation in the sport, be it, behind the wheel, running a laptop, mechanics, media, sport administration. So that's why, there is no right or wrong answer to how to build diversity and engagement in the sport, but there are, consequences for doing things in certain ways. And I think what we're seeing now is that with the best of intentions, when the woman who's helped set up the series in conjunction with David Coulthard escapes my brain at the moment, but this was one way of promoting serious female racers at a serious racing level. I think we're starting to see, if you don't have all those boxes ticked, that you don't have that longevity in the program. Whereas if the program looked something similar to, one of the Red Bull programs where it's multidiscipline, it's multi-level, and it's about promoting the personality, engaging with brands and sports and venues and activities that resonate with the general populace and the fan base, and then elevating that person through multiple levels, so that at the same time that the driver or the engineer or whoever it is develops and grows in the sport, so too does the fan base that gets to experience that promotion and recognition of that talent through the sport.
Yeah, we've seen how important it's becoming in the sport of cricket with the involvement of women and the growth of women's cricket. I mean, they're saying that the crowds at all cricket nowadays is the number of young women and young girls who are coming along to watch all forms of cricket, both the men's and the women's, has grown substantially, because, as they say, you can't aspire to what you can't see. And if there are young girls out there and they see sort of stars out there and they see young women winning races, which they nearly did on the weekend at the European Le Mans Series. Yet again, the so-called Iron Dames team, there's no sort of special treatment for them. They're winning and performing well on their merit, and they finished second in class again in GTE. So they've done well all year. I think they did win one round at some stage, but they've done very, very well over the. And also, there's a young the winner of the Formula 3 regional competition in Japan this year is a young woman as well. So so it can be done, but it's just getting up to. Perhaps this obsession with getting to Formula 1 needs to be and say, hey, look, if you don't make Formula 1, it doesn't mean you're a failure. I mean, if you make the World Endurance Championship, or if you make IndyCar, or if you make the World Rally Championship, or whatever it is, if you're making a career and a good career out of being a professional racing driver and actually winning races, then that's pretty good. You don't necessarily have to race Formula 1, and no, that's true of both men and women, I think.
Well,
Anyway,
Formula One has proven to be a really great ladder to the World Endurance Championship, hasn't it?
it has. They're doing, and I think that will possibly continue. Perhaps even next year. I mean, let's see. We've seen a couple of signings. Wan Yu Zhao or Zhao Wan Yu or whatever the way you run it. He's been re-signed with Alfa Romeo. So really now there's really only 3 opportunities left for Dan Ricciardo, with Haas, Alpine, and Williams. Nick De Vries is still
a small spot available as the understudy at Mercedes.
And now Lewis Hamilton is putting his hand up and saying, perhaps because of perhaps this is something that they've used sort of to give to motivate Lewis a bit more, to sort of say, perhaps Lewis is saying, I don't know, I'll think about it, I'll see how I feel at the end of the year. And I think they might have said, Dan Ricciardo might be available, and they're going,
reserve. And if they put him in,
hang on a second. Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I'm happy to race for, even if we don't win anything this year. I'm happy to race for another 2 or 3 years. I'm loving this.
Sacrifice my reputation for it all. Boom, boom. it's all.
And of course,
what if
in a year or two, we've also got Audi entering into F1 too.
Yes, and that'll be interesting to see which way they come in, and sort of. I think that the interesting thing is, the rumour going round is that they're very, very, whoever they go with and however they get into Formula One, they've said from a company perspective, they're very, very keen to have an all-German driver lineup, and they would be very, very keen to have the name Schumacher associated with said driver lineup. So. But that's, it's a while off. But you know that Audi, I mean, because of their incredible success in every form of motorsport that they've done in the past sort of, couple of decades, I mean, from the World Rally Championship and the Quattro through to the extraordinary run that they had at Le Mans with the R8 and the R10, and going through until they pulled out of that series, from even IMSA and Trans Am in the United States, everything that they've got involved with in the main, they've eventually won it and done well in, and I don't think Formula One will be any different. So Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Just quickly, we're sort of running out of time. Let's have a look. Two wheels, a big week, as we said on the show tonight. A great weekend for Jack Miller, and it's coming out increasingly, sort of in our lower third that we were running before. I'll bring that back up again. But Jack, in an interview, has basically said that it's at the end of the day he felt that he was always on a hard wicket at batting on a hard wicket at Ducati, because he said it's very much an Italian team with an Italian crew and an Italian mindset and an Italian language, and he said he really did feel. He said, he wasn't made to feel unwelcome, but he just felt that he was always the outsider, and that was always making things a bit difficult for him. So I think now that the pressure's off, he's got somewhere to go. He can sort of say, I don't care anymore. And he's just going out and racing and having fun. And we saw what happened on the weekend, because he dominated.
Just on that note, yeah. Well, I mean, look, if it's not your home team and you haven't got your whole sport. Remember when Valentino Rossi obviously had Jeremy around with him at all stages. So I mean, he had that level of comfort around him as an engineer, at least, very much. I mean, so Jack's never probably had Vegemite and toast sitting next to him and cornflakes for breakfast all the time. However, I'd like a chat with Casey Stoner one day and see how he felt, because he would have been in a similar situation when he was at Ducati.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Yeah, because it didn't seem to affect him too badly.
It didn't affect him. I mean, he was winning races. I mean, Jack's won a few races as well, though, too. I mean, so performance-wise, I'm sure that they are lovingly giving him some flowers and chocolates and goodbyes. I don't think there would be any ill feeling. I think it's probably just the way Jack feels, because it's not as naturally at home as, say, as a European rider would be with a particular team that has its links to its heritage. So, I mean, unfortunately, we don't have too many bikes around that are actually Australian made. They're either Japanese or the European in the all classes, whether it be Moto 2, Moto 3, or the main category. So yeah, I wouldn't mind Casey's opinion on how he felt, because there's never been anything about how outspoken from Casey or Ducati saying his time at there was, never felt uncomfortable. But as you said, Brett. But look, Marc Marquez is saying that he's going to see how he feels. His arm wasn't up to scratch at the last meeting over there in Japan, and they're obviously over and doing some Thai time this week, and yeah, there's only just a few of the riders are going through their paces now.
And the weather forecast is for tropical storms right throughout the weekend. So Jack we know likes the wet weather. You might get lots and lots of it, and storms are sort of the thing at the moment, because the big hurricane that has hit the Hurricane Ian, which has hit in Florida. The outskirts of that are now heading towards Atlanta, the southern parts of America, and of course this weekend, Road Atlanta's playing host to the Petit Le Mans, and the forecast for the days of the Petit Le Mans is heavy rain and wind there as well. So we've got tropical storms in the US, tropical storms happening in Thailand. Certainly if it's wet at Thailand, that perhaps that's something that Jack would. He would not be too disappointed, and just imagine, as we said on Tuesday, imagine the crowd that they're going to get at Phillip Island. Even though people have got nowhere to stay down there, just imagine the crowd that they're going to get. And incidentally, you might have seen
are your backyards up for Airbnb, isn't it, Brett? You got room for 2 or 3 tents, I think.
Yeah, I got room for a couple of tents in the back. So I mean, I'm a bit closer than Melbourne, but not much. But
I was going to say mine's taken up by car space, so they'll have to sleep in the back of the utes.
They can sleep in the back of the ute. That's all right. I'm sure they won't. Sure, they won't mind. But yeah, I've said some opportunities down there for for a lot of Airbnb, and anybody that's got a spare room down in the Phillip Island, San Remo, Wonthaggi area or something like that.
The Basque Coast will be...
The whole Basque Coast.
We'll get a whole boom out of it, Brett, because, I mean, you've got some beautiful wineries. I've been to a couple of those, so there's some great tasting opportunities there, some bed and breakfasts, like you said. The whole Basque Coast region is going to be absolutely going to reap the benefits, I think, of this to a certain extent, because people will say, right, and I can't camp there. And I live in, say, Wood End, and it's 2.5 hours away now through Melbourne, even on a quiet day. I'd rather be 45 minutes away from the track than 2.5 hours away, and I'll spend between two or three of us, we could spend a couple $100 and get and put our own Vegemite or jam on toast. So yeah, I think the region might benefit from a little bit, even as far as maybe Wonthaggi or the Bass Coast region.
Yeah, Wonthaggi's only sort of half an hour away because I come from Wonthaggi, and it really is very close to Phillip Island. Kilcunda will be totally booked out. There's the caravan park and the hotel at Kilcunda, but they'd be completely booked out. There's not a huge amount at Wonthaggi, but you could go around. There's the big RACV resort complex. If you want to sell a kidney, you could go to the resort complex down at Cape Patterson. I mean, I can't believe there's that huge resort there now. That's where I used to go surfing when I was like 14 years old. Over there, and there was nothing there. There was a milk bar and a service station and a pub, and that was about it. But now
everyone's been focusing on these Optus hacks and how easy it is to obviously derive information from the internet, from obviously Google, etc. like that. I wouldn't mind betting that a few people have got their phones or their tablets or whatever their device out in the last couple of weeks since this announcement that from the MotoGP Corporation there will be no camping. I wouldn't mind people be Googling camping, Bass Coast region, Phillip Island, and they'd be looking at the closest free spots you can go there on government land and pitch a tent nearby.
Well, that's the problem. There's really nothing anymore. I mean, because we used to camp like all over. We used to go every school holiday. We'd camp at one thing, and you just go down to the Wreck or Eagle's Nest or Cape Patterson or to the mouth of the Powlett, and you would just throw a tent in there. You'd find somewhere a bit sheltered in the tea trees. You'd go in there. You'd throw the tent down. You'd be there for a week or so, and there was no problems. You can't do that nowadays. The same with we used to camp at Phillip Island too, at Woolamai. We'd go down there sometimes for a break. You'd go to Woolamai for a few days or a weekend, and you just find a quiet spot and throw a tent down.
I wouldn't be surprised Anaconda's had a little bit of a boost in sales, and I reckon there'll be a few extra swags that'll be thrown out there on Crown land, left, right, and centre down there.
Actually, if you're looking for a swag, I don't know what but Aldi have got a sale on at the moment. They've got a really good looking big swag for I think it's about $99 or something. It looks pretty good. So yeah.
Yeah, if the weather turns out to be warm, there's going to be backlash about the ground being fine to be camping on anyway. But yeah, you're only going to get a nice 20, 22, 25 degree day down there. It'll still drop around 10 or degrees or maybe a little bit less. But I wouldn't be surprised that people go, oh, bugger this. Let's just take this. I've already owned a swag. Let's just find somewhere down there out of harm's way where the authorities aren't going to do it. We'll just sleep.
If you're going down there too, the Australian Grand Prix Corporation are advertising. They're going to have they've got you've had the big Barry Sheen ride going down there for many years, but they're going to have a ride with Jack Miller and Remy Gardner riding down on Wednesday. So if you want to go there, even if you come back, even if you just want to be a part of that, to jump on your bike and head down to Phillip Island alongside Remy and Jack.
All of a sudden, I might have to dust off the quacker.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that's all coming up.
Where does that originate from?
Look, I'm not sure. I haven't seen the details. I just saw that that's going to happen on the Wednesday. So whether that happens from Melbourne or whether that happens somewhere down here, but I think yeah, find out about that. But yeah, they are going to have a ride on the Wednesday down there for both Jack and alongside Jack and Remy as well. And I'm sure there'll be a few familiar faces as you've seen in the past. And as you well know, Doc, I mean, you've been involved with that ride, sort of launching from Cranbourne. So I imagine that's on again this year as well. But the main one they're advertising at the moment is the one down to
Steve,
on the Wednesday.
Steve, good friend of the show, Steve, Clay, Richards, the whole Richards family, and of course General and Jim. Stephen Richards used to do the Barry Sheen ride quite regularly as well too, and we actually said that when Clay was on the show a couple of years ago when Stephen was accompanying, just to, Clay's big enough and ugly enough to look after himself these days. Hi, Richards family, because I keep up with their posts quite regularly. Stephen and I said we were going to do the Barry Sheen ride together one year, even if I had to lend him one of my bikes. So he didn't have one at the time, but Stephen's got a license and loves doing the Barry Sheen ride. So I'll have to look up there.
So there's a few of them go down there. Craig Lowndes, I know Lounsey has done it. Neil Crompton's done it. There's been a few sort of people on the four-wheel side of it who have jumped on there, and certainly Steve's been one of them. Okay, now coming up this week on In Pit Lane, we'll have the big preview for the Bathurst 1000. Don't have a guest lined up yet. We're also, as I said on the show on Tuesday, when we recorded it Tuesday, and we said tonight, we have been contacting the Australian Grand Prix Corporation to see if we, and Motorcycling Australia, to see if we can get someone on to preview the MotoGP. But once again, in both cases, they haven't got back to us. So whether we get anybody, I mean, it's one of these things. I mean, as I said before, you've got a primetime Melbourne-based television show talking about motorsport, and the people who are doing the motorsport don't want to appear on it. So there's nothing we can do about it. So we might. Yeah, who knows? This coming Thursday night. Next week we might be talking. We might be talking about the trade situation in the footy and what's going to happen in the T20 World Cup. Who knows?
Brad Scott's been sacked as Essendon coach already. There you go. He's only been appointed today, but who knows? They might throw him out the window and say they won't hurt. They might be sliding doors for a couple of days. Hurdy one day, Brad Scott the next, but. Who knows? Don't forget Motor Classica next weekend as well too, Brett.
Yeah, Motor Classic is coming up. Hopefully we'll be there. I've sent off the applications for that. It's going to be a bit different this year. I think there'll be more of an emphasis on modern classics rather than just the old. There'll still be all the older cars, but I think they're going to emphasise some of the modern supercars and things like Bugattis and McLarens and those sorts of things.
Porsche's going to have a big display as well, though, too, with the
Porsche will be there. Yep. Yeah, so that'll be that. No, at the original at the Carlton, the exhibition buildings.
Which is the house, Richie, and coming down and hanging out with us for a little bit for a cuppa.
No, maybe not. Sorry.
Well, you can see how. Look at them. I mean, look at the beautiful backdrop he's got there. I mean, look at his beautiful house there. That's I mean, it's lovely. It's immaculate. I mean, they live a wonderful life over there. But anyway, that's all we have time for this week. Thanks for another. Yes, watching Tubi. Yes, Tubi. Yes, as I think I said last week, Tubi. They're different motorsports programs. Their wrestling stuff, their music stuff, the Tubi is worth having a look, and weird, wonderful cult movies as well. So check out Tubi.tv. It's certainly worth having a look at. So anyway, that's all we got time for this week on Full Course Yellow. Remember, if you are watching us on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel, please like and subscribe. It's really, really important to keep those algorithms up on YouTube, because if people aren't liking and subscribing, YouTube sort of forget about you and they don't tell people that you're on, and that makes life very difficult for us.
Brett, don't forget to point out to some of the people who are already onto it, some of the nostalgia videos that you and Online Invent have been producing and giving us a
well, I haven't been produced. They're just they're part of the huge collection that I've got here that I haven't seen for years, and I've forgotten some of the things. So go to Motorsport Archives on YouTube, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that Roy had himself and other people have sent to him, and stuff he shot himself. But also, I mean, the stuff that he's putting out now, most of that is from my collection here, and I have boxes and boxes and boxes of the stuff. I mean, there are advantages to being a hoarder.
It's more than box. So we've got box. Yeah, the mini. It's multiple boxes, Brett.
It's many boxes. Yes, full of all sorts of wonderful things. The one thing that is up there on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel are a couple of things. We have the Le Mans DVD from 2004, and also the Goodwood Festival of Speed. Have a look at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. I'm getting a lot of flack from English people about that, but according to this, they're there because I hated England. I'll never go back there again. Anyway, but yeah, Goodwood was great. Goodwood was fine. So have a look at Goodwood. Everything else about England sucked big time. But anyway, would never go. I'd rather said it's like, it's the whole country is like sort of a wet weekend in Rosebud with delusions of grandeur.
And
Really
mind you,
horrible.
They had a massive heat wave this year, mind you. They hit 40 degrees, and they let the whole
That
world
would
know
have-
about it.
They
It would have killed a
win.
few of them.
They
It did
whinged
knock
and moaned
us-
on the last day because it actually we were leaving and they went, oh, it's just as well you're leaving now. It's going to be get up to could get up to about 25 by Thursday. And it was like, they were talking about like the world was going to come to an end. It was like, oh, I don't know how we're going to cope with that. Anyway. Okay, everyone, we'll see you next week. Goodbye to all our English friends as well, possibly forever. We'll see you. We'll see the rest of you next week on Full Course Yellow, straight after In Pit Lane on Channel 31 at 9:30, when we'll be previewing Bathurst. And of course, next week we'll have the opening day of practice at Bathurst to talk about. So no doubt we'll be doing that as well. So catch you next week for Full Course Yellow. Until then, from all of us, we'll see you later. Bye for now.
Have a great weekend.